Hello, YouTube, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. This episode is all about the Oroville Dam. There's
Hello.
all kinds of information, and this one it's probably going to be a lengthy show considering what's in these articles. I've only got two articles, but I think everything you ever wanted to know and then some about the Oroville Dam out there in California. I've been talking about it for the last couple of days here. The spillway messed up out there, and it's caused a big flood. Um, First article here's off the Common Sense Show, and it says Governor Brown evacuate Sacramento, or 1 million could die from Oroville Dam. Almost 200,000 people have evacuated from several Northern California counties after damage to spillways at the Oroville Dam. I have spoken to several people that I know within the area which are impacted from the dam, and these people feel they need to leave right now. The Oroville Dam, the nation's tallest, remains intact, but barely. Spillway, which protects against the overflow of the dam when water levels are high and seriously eroding, was discovered on Sunday. The pipes supporting the spillway are failing. Paul Preston has been to the site and has seen the evacuation, or try this. Paul Preston has been to the site and has seen the pipes are failing. He said the dam could break at any moment. The discovery led to a mandatory evacuation for cities and counties near the lake of, near the Lake Oroville area. I just hung up the phone from speaking with Agenda 21 talk show host Paul Preston. Paul shared details about the situation and that are not being shared by the corporate-controlled media. Here's what I've learned. In the worst-case scenario, one official said an uncontrolled release from the dam could send a 30-foot wall of water downstream. Here are some details that Paul Preston has been able to learn. Number one, in addition to the 30-foot wall of water, a 10-foot wall of water would engulf the entire valley below the dam in only a few minutes. Number two, where Paul lives in Yuba City, wall of water would be a rampaging, or try this again, would be rampaging at a high rate of speed and maintain a depth of 10 feet. Number three, further downstream lies Sacramento. Sacramento has a population of about 2 million people in the region. Further upstream in the Oroville area, authorities are having great trouble evacuating 200,000 people. How long would it take to evacuate 2 million? The rampaging wall of water that would hit Sacramento would be at least 5 feet high. Number four, a warm, wet storm is expected on Wednesday. This will melt the snow and increase the pressure on the dam from snowmelt and absolutely lead to a breach in the dam. This means that Sacramento has 2 days to evacuate 2 million people. Where's Governor Brown? As of 1 a.m. Monday morning, Brown had not addressed the dam situation specifically. He had only applied for federal money for rain damage, and this is according to CRH Channel 3 in the area. Paul Preston told me that the same, try this again. Paul Preston told me the same, and the governor's office has not responded to the crisis except to send in the National Guard to Oroville, where there is reported fighting in the streets over looting. Paul Preston and several others are self-evacuating and not waiting for Jerry Brown to pull his head out of a very dark place. Predictable disaster. An accumulation of heavy rainfall in Northern California this winter has filled Lake Oroville to the verge of overflow and ultimately a breach in the dam. The purpose of the Oroville Dam is to provide flood control service for the region, and this region extends to Sacramento, which is located about 75 miles to the south. If the dam breaks, the water wall that will hit Sacramento will be a rapidly moving wall of water that will be about 5 feet high. Can you imagine the extreme loss of life? I spoke with 3 different people since 10 a.m. Mountain on Sunday night, and they estimate the loss of life without immediate evacuations could be as high as 1 million people. 1 million people. I've heard that figure more than once. Given the status of the dam, This was a completely predictable event, and the fact that a general order to evacuate is totally irresponsible. Some I have spoken with believe that Brown wants the disaster for political reasons that I will discuss in a follow-up article, as I will be conducting an interview with Paul Preston later in the early evening Monday, 10th. I want to emphasize that the dam's two spillways, the preliminary and the emergency spillway, which are channels to leak water out of the lake to prevent overflow, in danger of collapsing. The damage covers too large of an area at the dam site and is not, at this time, repairable. Then why aren't people in Sacramento being evacuated? What the local evacuation looks like. As soon as the local evacuation order was given, within 30 minutes, stores closed and locals were boarding up their shops. Local gas stations were overwhelmed and ran out of gas. The traffic out of town was moving in a snail's pace as evacuees waited in traffic trying to get out of low-lying areas. People were taking as long as 5 hours in bumper-to-bumper traffic. Reports of looting commenced almost immediately. Paul Preston said he was warned to not go anywhere without a gun. People are in a state of agitated panic with fear as the base emotion will act in a very unpredictable way. To the people of Sacramento, California, your state government is corrupt and inept. Many feel that Governor Brown is exploiting the situation for political gain. You cannot trust your local and state authorities to ensure that you can exit the area if need be. If I were in Sacramento, I would leave today, Monday morning. Do not wait for the authorities to make a decision. They need to drop the water levels by an estimated 50 feet to save one of the two spillways. That is not likely to happen with a new storm coming in on Wednesday. I have a question for you, Sacramento. Look at your rush hour traffic and multiply it by a factor of 100. If it took 5 hours at the local areas above you, and they are not, as of yet, fully evacuated, how long would it take to evacuate your city with a rushing wall of water coming at you? And remember, you can only evacuate in one direction. Powerless to help because he has to be invited in, and Jerry Brown is displaying no sense of urgency. Sacramento, you're on your own. That I have, this one is a lengthy one because there's a lot of articles on this site. And it all has to do with the dam. And I'm trying to get it to cooperate with me here. And it's, hang on. There we go. This is off the Los Angeles Times. And it starts out with Times reporter broadcast atop the Oroville Dam with a video, if you want to pull it up to take a look at that. Then there's the latest photos from the Oroville Reservoir crisis, and you can take a look at those. And frantic worker begins to fix the Oroville Dam's battered emergency spillway in advance of the new storms. And here's what it says. Officials have begun a complex operation aimed at trying to repair the damaged emergency spillway at Oroville Dam in advance of new storms coming into the area. Chris Orrock, for the Department of Water Resources, said workers were beginning a multiple-part operation to repair the emergency spillway. In one part, helicopters are dropping sacks of rocks into a hole created by erosion. Dump trucks are also bringing in more rocks to patch other spots and create slurry to solidify it. They're also building a gravel road out to where the helicopters are dropping the rocks. Then the trucks can drive out and create a slurry to deposit in the hole and solidify it. You're putting rocks in a hole, then you're putting slurry in to solidify it, he said. When water comes down, it will hit that patch and roll off. The work began this afternoon, but some of it has slowed with nightfall. John France, an engineer consultant at the AECOM, I don't know exactly how that's supposed to be pronounced, but it's AECOM, who has worked on dams for more than 30 years, said dropping large boulders in the hole in the primary spillway is a smart temporary fix. The large rocks will break up the flow of water a bit, so it won't have so much energy, he said. If the water has less energy, the underlying structure won't erode as quickly. Dusty Myers, chief of the Dam Safety Division of Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality, agreed. The velocity of the water, the more erosion it will cause, he said. The rocks, to me, sound like a precautionary measure to keep any more damage from occurring. The emergency spillway was brought into service for the first time ever this weekend after the main spillway suffered damage. But on Sunday, officials noticed a hole in the emergency spillway. Fearing further damage to the spillway, officials ordered more than 100,000 people to evacuate downstream water out of the reservoir through the damaged main spillway. That brought water levels low enough that the water stopped flowing from the emergency spillway. Another rainstorm expected Wednesday night, lasting through the weekend. Here says Attorney General warns against price gouging amid the Oroville Dam evacuation. California Attorney General Xavier Becerra warned businesses against price gouging at the wake of the massive Oroville Dam evacuations. California's price gouging law protects people impacted by an emergency from illegal price gouging on gas, food, housing, and other essential supplies, Becerra said in a statement. I urge hotels and gas stations and other businesses operating in and around the evacuation area to understand and comply with the law, and I encourage anyone who has information regarding illegal price gouging to report it to our office. Another article says Oroville Dam. This is what 100,000 cubic feet of water per second looks like. Times reporter Chris was able to drive across the dam to where the spillway is. Here is his impression. The lake behind me is placid, but geysers of water are shooting down the concrete spillway. It rushes down like a water slide with a width of a freeway and then plummets down below. I can see the mist rising from where it hits the river, and I can see the river in the distance. Activity here as repairs begin to the emergency spillway. Helicopters are flying overhead carrying sacks of rocks, and they're dropping those off on the far side of the emergency spillway where there was some erosion. Then there are giant dump trucks carrying more rocks across the dam and road that passes over the concrete spillway, and they're dumping those rocks in another spot. And they got a bunch of pictures and tweets there in that article. The next one is neighboring communities band together to help Oroville evacuees care for their animals. Mandate thought about the many Oroville evacuees who had to leave their livestock behind. He decided to take action. The 19-year-old took to social media and offered to transport people's large animals to safety free of charge. His post went viral on Twitter and Facebook, and many people called him asking for help. Sundate, who works in the cattle industry, said he understands the importance of helping those who depend on the animals to make a living. It made me think, what if that was my house and animal? I figure I have a truck and a trailer, and if people need help, I'll be willing, he said. The Orland, California resident lives about 1 hour away from Oroville and said that even though he's received many phone calls from people who need help, he hasn't been able to reach them because those areas are on lockdown and he isn't allowed to drive in. Neighboring areas have opened up their facilities to care for livestock. Mike Ballou and his wife, Connie Ballou, oversee Camelot Equestrian Park in Oroville and caring for about 30 horses and one baby pig belonging to people who had to evacuate. They expect to care for up to 90 animals. Doug Ose, manager at Gibson Ranch, has offered to care for the horses of people who were told to evacuate. His facility is 320 acres, and he said he is able to accommodate about 20 horses. Ose said that he is also receiving calls from people who are offering to help transport horses to his ranch. Whether it's horses, sheep, or cattle, people are scrambling to get livestock out of the way, and we are trying to help, Ose said. Environmental groups predicted Oroville emergency spillway erosion in 2005. Court document. Erosion near the Oroville Reservoir emergency spillway was first predicted in court documents filed by environmentalists more than a decade ago. In a technical memo on Lake Oroville's discharge, the Yuba County Water Agency wrote in 2002 that if the Department of Water Resources used an emergency spillway, extensive erosion would take place, and that the spillway road and possibly high voltage transmission towers would be impacted, according to a motion to intervene filed by the environmental group because the area downstream from the emergency spillway crest is an unlined hillside. Significant erosion of the hillside would occur, the document said. According to the California Department of Water Resources, that's exactly what happened. After the dam's main spillway was damaged, engineers decreased its output to save Pacific gas and electric lines and prevent further damage to the spillway's lower half. Lake to fill beyond capacity, which forced water to flow over the emergency spillway on Saturday. The results were as predicted more than a decade ago. PG&E equipment was jeopardized and the hillside dramatically eroded, forcing more than 100,000 residents down the river to evacuate as a precaution in case the spillway completely failed. In the Department of Water Resources response issued with final environmental impact report in 2008, the agency found that the dam and the emergency spillway were in good condition. Department of Water Resources officials said on Monday that they could not comment on the 2005 document. Another article, Oroville abandoned after last-minute evacuations. And that's a video you can pull up and take a look at. Another one here is crisis at Oroville Dam never happened before event, top official says. Officials say they're still releasing 100,000 cubic feet per second from the paved spillway. No water is going over the emergency spillway at this point. It's hard to look at a crystal ball and predict how it's going to evolve, said Kevin Lawson of California Fire, or CAL FIRE, it says. The flow into the lake is roughly 37,000 cubic feet per second. So they're shedding a net of 60,000 or so cubic feet per second, 8 feet per day. It's unclear if they'll hit the target of lowering the lake by 50 feet before the next rain hits, but they're expecting a smaller level of precipitation at a cooler temperature, so it may not run into the lake as quickly, giving them more time. We're going to deal with that as it comes, said Acting State Department of Water Resource Director Bill Croyle. There were questions about problems with the emergency spillway, which began eroding instead of serving its function. I'm not sure anything went wrong, Croyle said. This was a new, never happened before event. When the press conference ended, Croyle left for an updated briefing on the spillway conditions. They have not started dropping rocks from helicopters at this point, but they've been staging supplies. Butte County Sheriff Corey Honia shot down rumors the evacuation could end Monday afternoon. They're working on a repopulation plan, but there's no timeline. Getting those people home is important to me, but I have to be able to sleep at night knowing they're back in that area. His department had to move 500 inmates from Butte to Alameda County Jail during the evacuation. They're being held there for the time being. Another article says Butte County Sheriff defends evacuation order. Butte County Sheriff Corey Honia on Monday defended his decision a day earlier, calling for evacuation of more than 100,000 residents downstream from the Oroville Dam after concerns that a spillway could fail and unleash a 30-foot wall of water on the region. I recognize and absolutely appreciate the frustration people who were evacuating must feel, Honia said at a press conference. It wasn't a decision I made lightly. The calls for cities and towns below Lake Oroville to evacuate were unexpected and triggered panic Sunday evening. Some people abandoned their cars on the highway and left with the clothes on their back after the Department of Water Resources announced that an emergency spillway would fail within the hour. to release enough water from the reservoir to relieve pressure from the emergency spillway Sunday, and apparently it worked. The lake's water level had dropped several feet by Monday, and crews were gathering giant boulders that helicopters would airlift to the emergency spillway and plop that was eroding, DWR said. Pony has shot down rumors the evacuation could end Monday afternoon. They're working on a repopulation plan, but there's no timeline. Home is important to me, but I have to be able to sleep at night knowing they're back in the area, he said. His department had to move 500 inmates from Butte to Alameda County Jail during the evacuation. They're being held there for the time being. And that's all that's in that one. You have everything that I know on the Oroville Dam situation. If you like what I'm doing here, give it a thumbs up. Let me know, so everybody gets to hear the news. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done that yet, and that way you'll stay informed. I'll see you in the next one.